So we'll get right into it. We'll do a little bit of a rehash from last session. And then again, if you guys have any questions and you want to chime in or write it in the chat, please feel free. And if we have time at the end, I can also go over those as well. So without further ado, today's session will be more about data. So we covered, what are the 101s on marketing? What do these acronyms mean? How does it all work? And today we want to talk about how, in terms of, whether you are a business coach, a CEO, a COO, how can we phrase this better so that franchisees understand how far their dollar can go? And if they don't have a dollar to spend, then what? So we'll go ahead and get into it again. My name is Madeline Zook. I've been a franchisee for almost 20 years now. My husband and I have 3 kids, 5 brands. I'm a CMO over at Rolling Suds, and I also am a board member of about 6 or 7 other brands. And I also have a couple supplier companies in the marketing and ops space. So whether I like it or not, I am fully ingrained in franchising. So to cover kind of what we went over last time, our biggest challenge in franchise marketing, or just franchising is in general, right now, I think that franchisees have forgotten what it means to be part of a franchise. Part of that is because the economy is really hard. Second piece of that is coming off of 2023 when marketing, specifically digital marketing, had a great year. We have now succumbing to, well, now it's your fault. Right? Marketing's not working. It's not working. Why am I paying these fees? And it takes a toll. And what I have found across thousands of franchisees is that they want the maximum results and they want to invest the minimum. Unfortunately, it's kind of like very similar home office or employment things. Like, I want to keep making more money and doing less. Now, in franchising, that's actually possible if you work the system the right way. I think, unfortunately, what we're seeing, though, is because of these drastic swings of the economy and the political uncertainty, legacy franchisees who have earned their right to maybe not market as much, not have to do the grassroots, now in fact have to go back to it. Competition is rising. And then the newer franchisees just do not have the right expectations of what that hustle looks like. So the more data we can put in front of them, the better. I think one of the biggest struggles I'm working with now is that what happens when the franchisees refute the data. And we'll cover that on session number 3. So I think a big piece of this that I want you to reiterate and remember is that just because they're part of a franchise doesn't mean that they're going to get low cost or free customers. People think that the NAF is their local marketing spend. They think that your sign on the door means that, I shouldn't be paying for customers. What am I paying for in this brand? Well, you're paying for systems. And like one of my friends, Adam Conto, says, our fee structures are not a la carte, right? This is a part of a system that we're growing together. And that is the communication standpoint that hopefully some of these sessions will allow you to fix and improve in terms of the marketing operations. So today, this lesson is going to be about attribution. How can we tie back revenue to marketing? Ad dollars. How does channel attribution cut down on wasted ad spend? And time. If the dollars aren't there, then what? So just a little reminder, these are some of the acronyms that you should know: cost per lead, conversion rate, cost per acquisition, impressions, lifetime value, intent, average ticket, radius marketing, return on ad spend or ROAS, and brand awareness. For the sake of today's session, we're going to be focusing on these. Conversion rate. Reminder, it can be either on average, a 1 or a 2 phase process. It's a little bit difficult in my shoes to talk to all different types of brands on this webinar. So for sake of, let's say, home service, you might have lead to estimate, and then the franchisee goes estimate to close. Or you might be a QSR where the conversion rate is they come in and there really isn't a lead, it's a direct to customer. So looking at that conversion rate, cost per acquisition, how much does it cost to get a new customer or a new sale? What is the lifetime value of that customer? You could break it down to annual too as well. The average ticket size, and again, what in all of those, how does that work on the return on ad spend? Another reminder that established businesses typically spend 5 to 7% of their monthly revenue on marketing to keep growing. Very rarely is that the marketing minimums or marketing recommendations of the franchisor, i.e. the FDD or the franchise agreement. It's often almost half of that. So franchisees, again, they're already coming in with the expectation to spend less than the average. And right now, less established businesses are probably around the 15 to 18% of monthly revenue to grow. This is honestly a lot of it based on the competition and the costs that Google is setting. Recently, I went to Google headquarters and had it out with some of the heads of state there. And the reality is we know they have the monopoly. And when we were talking about how this affects local businesses, as much as I love Google, they were like, well, you don't need to use us. You don't have to. It's not going to work for everyone. I go, you basically just said, like, okay, kids, here's your suitcase. You can run away from home. We all know we need Google. So how do we communicate that best so that the franchisor doesn't end up being the one blamed for how expensive things are these days? And then a reminder, this is a pretty thorough franchise marketing map. Reminder that every new sale or customer you get, that average impression, meaning the time the customer sees your brand, is about 12 to 15 impressions. Not every single one of these impressions, meaning where they could potentially see your brand, is equal. Some are 1, some are 7. No matter what, if a customer comes in, there's multiple touch points. Ideally, those add up to around 12 or 15, and likely they are converting in the higher intent channels, meaning the pay-per-click where they're searching for you. So while attribution, we would love to see a direct ROI line from this podcast, this pay-per-click, this public relations. The realistic piece is that they're getting bits and pieces everywhere. We want to spend the majority of our budget in the lowest intent, because those are often the highest quality leads, but that doesn't mean that you can only do that. And that's where we're starting to fight pretty heavily with the, your budget is not enough, then what situation. And then, the last reminder from session 1 is, break even is the revenue that covers overhead. We need to figure out how many sales that is. What on average, what is the ticket size? So is that 10 customers? Is that 20? I just listened to Omar, who's the founder of College Hunks Hauling Junk, and every month they're not recurring. So they start from a 0 revenue. So they need to know definitively, how many moves do we have to do every month to just break even on our costs? Now, for something like a maid service, you have that recurring revenue. So, how many more customers do we need to grow our profit? And that's where it's really important to understand, what is that cost per customer? What is that average ticket size? Is the franchisee even remotely in the realm of spending enough to hit those revenue goals month over month? Oops, I think I just went one too far. Okay, so again, this is important. I recommend you take a screenshot, because oftentimes I have to go back and remind myself on this slide. So the marketing spend in total is directly influenced by your cost per acquisition, what we just talked about. What is that cost that you have to spend to get a new customer, that average sale size, and then the lifetime value or annual value of the client. This falls primarily in the operations realm. And the reason why I say that is we'll go into it a little bit more, but oftentimes this comes with a lot of coaching the franchisee on what is their attrition? Are they selling correctly? What is their conversion rate? A lot of stuff that ops have more of a hand in than top of the funnel marketing. Next, your cost per acquisition is directly influenced by your cost per lead and your conversion rates. This is primarily marketing's responsibility. And this is where it comes into question, are the vendors you're using or the people in-house, are they doing the best work to make sure that they're getting the most effective cost per lead? Are they getting the best quality lead so that the conversion rates increase? Again, this is primarily in marketing's realm. Next is that conversion rate, which is directly influenced by your sales process and time, the tech stack, your reputation, your reviews, as well as your industry season, sales size, and promotions. I would say probably in this is about 70% operations and about 30% marketing, just based on the touch point and how much accountability a franchisee has in this stage of the funnel. And then last is your cost per lead, which is directly influenced by how much money you're willing to spend, i.e. pay to play, your time investment. Is the franchisee investing enough time to contribute to a lower cost per lead, as well as the brand, industry, season, size, location, age? I would put marketing and franchisees at about a 50-50 split of responsibility here. So on that, this part where I circled is always ends up being where people focus on. They, are always like, it's never, how do I say this? It's both in this place is it's never marketing's fault, it's never operations fault, and it's never the franchisee's fault. It's always somebody else's fault, but it's very hard to find where that accountability is. A lot of times people want to blame the ad agency. That is the easiest place to blame. They are always under fire. Then marketing wants to say, hey, well, it has to be, the call center or the franchisee, and the franchisee says, well, my region isn't great. And so this is where the focus really is. And what I would love for us to focus on is that this top piece and this bottom piece, because these two pieces directly influence the, we'll say this third part that everyone focuses on. And this is where the conversion rate controls a huge piece of what a marketing budget actually looks like. So again, these slides are lengthy and not something that I would normally do as marketing, but I think for the sake of the people on this call, I think it's important to go through this and talk a little bit more on it. So in terms of marketing spend that we said is mostly at the helm of operations, what can operations do to increase return on ad spend? What can they do? The biggest thing is to communicate the numbers individually to both marketing and every single franchisee. Every time I get on a stage and I ask the question, everyone in this room, raise your hand if you know how much it costs you to get a customer. I would say, if I'm lucky, half that room goes up. And the reality is that means that half of that room, even if we say 25% of the half that didn't raise it because they were too shy to raise their hand, that means 25% of your system has no idea how much it costs them to get a customer. And when I dig into it further, usually it ends up actually being 75% of the room. This is a very easy thing to calculate. And we'll go into kind of how to do that later. But some of the questions I want to ask is, is there a system in place that allows the marketing team to view each franchisee's marketing and operations KPIs? If so, are the team members properly trained to go into that? For instance, if we have a profit keeper or a workies, very rarely myself do I ever as a marketing person, log into that ops CRM. Most of the time, I am asking our COO or our business coaches, hey, I need average job size, conversion rate, and sales cycle for this franchisee, which isn't great, but also at least we're asking the right questions. So the first thing I want to make sure is that marketing may not even need to know, depending on how experienced they are in their roles, how important it is for them to know this. Because if they have a franchisee barking up their tree about how they're not getting enough leads, it's their fault, the spend is on average, but what they don't realize is that franchisee is converting like poop, 12% that should be 50. Well, then in fact, maybe it's not something that's broken in their funnel. So this is one of the biggest things that I think is important for ops to really share, whether it's creating a dashboard, putting a training on, or getting some sort of recurring spreadsheet per franchisee that the marketing team can then go in and say, okay, this subset of franchisees, they are not converting well. We understand this is likely in the funnel stage, not going to be our fault. Here's franchisees that are converting well, but their sales cycle is below, or sales size is below average. We know that we need to get them more leads because their average sales cycle or sales size is low. How do we do that? And then there's the top subset of, hey, they convert well, their average sales size is great. is their marketing going far enough? Can I push our vendors or our team to drive these costs or optimize a little better? Or do I need to reach out to ops and say, hey, Terry over here has a great cost per lead. He's converting well. You should probably talk to him about increasing his budget because he could make X amount more money. Very rarely do I see franchisors doing that because either the ops don't understand the marketing or the marketing doesn't understand the ops. And usually franchisees that are relatively performing well say, okay, great, thanks, do it. And that is something that I think the expectation is off from the franchisors. We assume that the franchisees are going to see that and do it instinctively. They are not. So it's something that the more proactive we can be, the better. The second piece is, again, are those KPIs being clearly communicated to the franchisees? Do they know their cost per lead? Do they know their cost per acquisition? Do they know their conversion rate? Oftentimes, they just assume what they get and how they operate is as best as it's going to be. More times than not, ops has to kind of take a deep breath and say, oh my gosh, we need to do some sales training with these franchisees. So it's important to have that self-accountability for the franchisees there as well. The biggest thing that you will then get hit with is, well, you don't understand my region, or why are we comparing these revenue subsets? You know, Michael over there makes $2 million and drives an Aston Martin, and I opened, 3 months ago and barely cutting 30 grand. So one of the biggest things I always recommend is, one, can you break it down and provide benchmarks by both region and revenue cohort? So the people that are in the $0 to $50,000 a month in revenue mark, can you pull their data together, show them the benchmarks, what they're spending, and then the same thing for, here's the Florida region, here's what we're spending. Another way to do this, if the data dashboards are a little bit too difficult, is you can put them in revenue and regional virtual roundtables, have them meet once a quarter, and then you can also have them meet at your conventions, and they can talk to each other about what they're doing, what's within their budgets, what's working in their area, which takes a little bit less pressure off of you as well. And franchisees, for the most part, love these types of things. Usually what I like to do, and sorry if I've said this before, is at conventions, specifically with the revenue roundtables, you can appoint kind of like a cohort leader and say, hey, we're going to hold everyone at this table accountable for each other's success. Obviously, we're going to support you. Your goal by next convention is to get to the next level of revenue table. And after seeing this done 3 or 4 years, it is very clear and almost a little bit self accountability embarrassing of who's hitting their benchmarks and getting to the next roundtable and who's being left behind. And then it starts to get a little bit more of self in the mirror. What am I not doing correctly that the rest of the people that were at my table 2 years ago are now above and beyond? So that's been helpful as well. For recurring revenue models, do franchisees understand how many transactions it's going to take for them to get a return on ad spend? The amount of times that I have to explain this and have had to explain it to myself and my husband, a reminder, is wild. So for our Made Pro, for example, it costs us, I don't know, it's something like $300 or $400 to acquire a customer. Well, that average clean might be $125. So I need to make sure that I keep them for at least, let's say, a year to get a significant profit or return on their ad spend. Franchisees sometimes will see the first ticket size and what they spent and said, well, I'm losing money on this job. I can't do this. And they don't understand, well, getting the customer is the first, keeping it is the second part. And if you are able to keep that customer for a year or 2 years, now you have a significant profit that you're making off of them. And on that, what is that customer attrition rate? Ideally, it should say under 6%. But anything higher, it might indicate that these customers are turning before the franchisee can even recoup their marketing investment on that specific customer. So a good thing to remind franchisees as well, because again, they're always looking at net new. It's very easy to forget that customer service side of it. And then, are current pricing strategies aligned with inflation and rising marketing costs? I have a franchisee in our power washing brand, and their average job size is about $200 less than what our benchmark is. And they said, this is just what I've always done, but I'm struggling here. And it was very clear to us, hey, you're underbidding. You have to raise your prices. Otherwise, there is not enough volume and demand based on your marketing budget that allows us for you to keep a profit, keep turning a profit every month. Franchisees are always scared to do price increases. They're afraid they're going to lose customers, but sometimes it is extremely necessary to do that. So I definitely encourage you at least twice a year to do price audits and also some secret shopping. What are the competitors in and around their area charging, and where do we fit into that? And then the last piece is, do you have a clearly defined goal for a cost per lead? Yes, cost per leads can fluctuate, but for the most part, it fluctuates within a pretty small subset. For example, the largest subset we would see is in a seasonal business. An off-season lead for power washing, $110. Extremely high, makes the margins difficult. That's when we know, hey, we have to peel back on overhead, because we might get it to 100. It's still going to be in that range. Or do we know that in the on season, we're looking at $40 to $50, right? So then you can say, if we know that in the in season, it's 40 to 50, and say I have 3 vendors that franchisees can choose from to select for their ad spend. We've got, one at 45, one maybe at 52, and then one at 73. Very clear that we have to then go at that vendor and say, what are you doing wrong? Because you're out of the benchmarks that we should be at. And also for franchisees, hey, your cost per lead is extremely high right now in your area. We need to dig into what's going on, because it's out of the realm of what we would deem acceptable. So again, don't just assume that every cost per lead is set by that franchisee in that area. You're going to see trends, and definitely look into those as well. Again, I apologize. This is a pretty boring presentation, but I think it's important data-wise. So again, to go over this, and I will send out the marketing revenue calculator as well. We're going to assume that this is a home service company, 2 different parts of conversion rate, to show you how much it affects the actual spend. Now, this is assuming the franchisee does nothing locally, and this is not taking into account recurring revenue. This is why cost per lead matters. So if we assume that the conversion rates are the same, the average job size is the same, and the revenue goal is the same, but one franchisee is at 100 and one's at 30, we're looking at a 66,000 to hit 25 or a 20 to hit 25. So this is why it matters to keep a very tight grip on that cost per lead, specifically digital. This is where, like I said, for marketing, you're going to want to make sure that your vendors are not selling you the A team, giving you the D team. Are they making changes? Are they on top of it? One of the biggest things I have a problem with is when agencies kind of set it and forget it, because to be honest, it's very easy to do that. But as long as you're giving your agencies, hey, as soon as you go above this, let's say $70 cost per lead, we're having an audit analysis. It kind of keeps them in check and lets them know that, sure, they might set it and forget it, but they also can't go above a certain piece or they're going to start being audited. The next piece is that conversion rate. Let's assume we're at a $30 cost per lead. We've got a franchisee that's converting 80% and one that's converting 22%. You can now see the difference here. The $9,000 spend to make 25 or a 34 to make 25. Why it's important that we understand what this conversion rate looks like. Most of the time it is on the franchisee. The second piece is, does the marketing team and the vendors understand where the best leads are coming from? I've had a brand that they had a lot of leads and the cost per lead looked really good, but it was majority on Meta. And again, like I said, when was the last time you went on Facebook, said, can't wait to buy something? So the lead quality wasn't very good because most of those people are not ready to buy. So it was decreasing the conversion rate. So that's where you want to find the good piece of a relative cost per lead. Doesn't always want to be the lowest, but also what is the lowest cost per lead we can get with the highest conversion rate. And that's always the mix that ops and mark are working with. And then again, ticket size. If we assume conversion rates and cost per leads are the same, we've got one franchisee that can spend or charge us at 175 and one that's charging 75. Well, now you can see it's more than double what their investment would need to be to hit a certain one, which is why, again, you may not want to charge more because you're afraid you might lose sales, but in fact, you're actually going to be losing money regardless because you're not charging enough. And this live calculator, again, like I said, I'll send it out, is super helpful for franchisees. Even if you don't give it to them and you just take screenshots of their numbers, it is very difficult to refute a formula for what they're doing. Okay, so cost per acquisition directly influenced by your cost per lead and your conversion rates. This is where the marketing team, you can hold them accountable. What can they do to increase ROAS? Hire well and partner well. And what I mean by this is, are you having your internal teams run the ad spend, do the creative, do the strategy, or are you partnering with a NetSertive, a Cortex, whoever it may be? And questions to ask. How are franchisees managing their digital marketing spend? Do they have the flexibility to choose from a list of preferred vendors, which is usually the recommendation because not one agency is going to work for everyone. And it's also very difficult if you only mandate one, because no matter how many times you tell them, we have somebody else running it, here's the agency, here's the point of contact, the franchisor then becomes the ad agency, even if you're partnering. So when you have a couple to choose from, it also gives you a little bit more flexibility into benchmarks and seeing, is the ad agency truly doing a good job? That said, when you mandate one provider, you also have some very clear data that's apples to apples. So how are we doing that as a brand? In either of those cases, again, are there performance benchmarks they have to hit? Where is the accountability to ensure that we're maximizing our ROI? Number two, are we choosing the marketing channels optimized for lead generation? Are we going too far on the Meta and not enough Google? Are we only on Google and we're not getting enough brand awareness, so it's driving the cost per lead up? Again, this is where even when you might say you have a low cost per lead, the franchisee will always come back and say, well, the leads suck. They're not even good. You don't want to be in a position where you can say, no, that's probably true, right? So where can we hold the accountability there? Has marketing provided clear transparency into how funds are allocated and why? The reason why I say this is because oftentimes, one, they think the NAF is their local marketing spend. The amount of times I have to tell them that this is a fund that goes into build the brand name and doesn't even touch you like individually, locally, directly is wild. And then they're like, oh, I have to spend another $2,000 to like get leads for myself. I'm like, yes. So one, on the brand fund and the NAF piece. Two, if you're just saying, here, spend this, here's the credit card, run with it, franchisees can always come back and be like, you're not even running the right campaigns, or you're running it on TikTok. You want to be able to line item out, expect exactly where their funds are going. Here's where PPC, here is PMAX, here is Meta. On your PPC, here are your 3 campaigns. You're doing, acai bowl, protein bowls, lunch near me, whatever it may be. So then you can show them exactly where their dollars are going. And that, in fact, it's not just all going to a NAF. It's not going to a management fee. They're always looking for reasons to say that we're not spending their money the right way. So the better you can line item this out per franchisee, the better. I always recommend you partner with a company that has those dashboards. I see Sydney on here. I worked for NetSertive for a long time, and actually some of my franchise clients use them. And it's great because on the dashboard, I can show per franchisee and a roll-up. Here are the common campaigns. Here's how they're doing. Here's to the dollar real-time data where it's going. And it's very easy once you get on a phone call with a franchisee. Are they ever going to log into their dashboard? Probably not. But once you walk them through it and they know they have the capabilities to do that, you are now enabling them to do it themselves. And it's okay to take a little bit of a step back on the support structure because, again, we want to teach them how to fish, not always, feed them dinner. Coming from someone who can't cook and I'm lazy as shit, but still. Okay. After that, our franchisees adequately trained and equipped to execute local marketing initiatives. For us, we live this day to day. It's very easy for us to say, go be the mayor of your community. Yeah, do some local events, do some door hanging. Most of the time, we're not signing up franchisees that are good at marketing. Very rarely. And oftentimes, they don't even want to do it. So you need to give them a task list of like 6 to 10 things they should do. How are they doing it? How much is it going to cost? Where do they buy the door hangers? Giving them a true grassroots strategy instead of just saying, go out and get referrals and hand business cards, because it's almost too I don't know. I can't say the word. You know what I'm saying? It's almost too clouded and in the cloud for them to be like, oh, okay, that makes sense. I'll go do it. Like, same thing for me. If you're like, hey, go balance your checkbook, I'd be like, I'm going to open another credit card. I don't want to do that. Right. So give them exact steps on how to do that. I told you it is a rough morning for me, but I got a McDonald's coffee, so don't worry about it. Okay. Nope. Number 3, the conversion rate directly influenced by ops majority, let's say 70%, marketing 30%, sales process, tech stack, industry. What can ops and marketing do together to increase the ROAS? 1, set expectations early and train often. Sounds super generic and like no shit, Sherlock, but I mean, I got just lit up by a franchisee 10 minutes ago that said, our review and listings agency must be not doing their job because I had a negative review that didn't get removed. And I'm like, Terry, the negative review is legit. Yes, you showed up to the job 4 hours late and you only spent half an hour there. The expectation is not that you're never going to get a 1-star review, but the idea is if someone is like, oh, I'm going to get revenge on this business because they didn't hire my boyfriend who didn't show up to his interview. Yeah, that's not a legitimate review. So what are the expectations of each of your partners, of your coaches, of the NAF per se? And then we have to continue training on that. So a more tactical explanation of this is, once a lead enters the system, is the sales process designed to be timely and efficient? Is the responsibility entirely on the franchisee, or is it a shared model? For instance, when a lead comes in, is it all on the franchisee to call them immediately, to pick up the phone if it rings? What is the callback process? If it is strictly on the franchisee, I can tell you right now, there is holes in that process that they are never going to solve for unless you do it for them. There is just no world where I see, unless they are too far in the day-to-day, that it's almost impossible for them to start growing as a franchise owner, empire builder, that if they are in charge of answering their phones, getting back to the leads, following up on them, or managing the managers that do that every single day, that all of these leads are going to have an effective conversion rate and an i.e. a cost per lead. Because we all know that if we're hiring managers to do that, unless they're salaried, maybe these are kids that are just like, I'm not having a great day. What's up? Welcome to so-and-so. How can I help you? Or if it's a franchisee and they're out spraying bugs and they get 4 calls that day, at the end of the day, their wife's yelling at them. They're dripping in pesticide. The kid's like, where's my mac and cheese? Did they call those 4 people back? Likely not. You can clearly tell that's coming from personal experience. But is this an opportunity for us to handle some of that for them? If we have a call center, do they have benchmarks to hit? Being in a call center is like, I would probably rather be in jail than run a call center. But that said, you can show the benchmarks of, on average, this call center, it's 24/7. Do they do a fabulous job? No, but I would also bet that the franchisee doesn't always do a fabulous job. What are the benchmarks that they need to hit in terms of conversion rate, callback time, etc.? How much are we responsible for that? And then once the call center passes it to the franchisee, what are they accountable for? And then same thing goes for, let's say, nurturing. Do we set up the nurturing emails and touch points? Is the franchisee doing it? There was a situation with one of our personal brands that the franchisor said, nope, all of your customers that have been given an estimate and haven't followed through, we're nurturing them, we're emailing, you're all good, it's on us. And then we found out at the end of the season, not a single email went out, right? That is a huge missed opportunity. So definitely things to piece together and look for the fractures. Does the brand have an automation and technology infrastructure needed to compete effectively? Let's talk about your Google business page, the Apple Maps, the local listings, the verifications, reputation monitoring. Are you automatically sending out review generations, which Mark Spencer at Consumer Fusion calls the moment of glee? As soon as they walk out and see a freshly power washed driveway, let's send them a review, not 3 weeks later when it's in pollen season and doesn't look as good. Are we responding to the reviews in a timely manner? Are franchisees really going to do this every single day, in and out, on top of all the leads and the calls and managing their employees? Probably not. So this is a piece of the sales cycle and process that directly relates to lead volume and conversion rate, and i.e. quality of lead. Can we take that in? What are we doing to assist there? And then have we clearly defined the business cycle, in season, off season, ramping up? The marketing team here should be proactively developing campaigns to drive lead volume in the slow season and in the high season. And are we running promotions? Are we communicating how to run those promotions? I can't tell you how many times franchisees tell me, I can't run a promotion. I can't afford to, lose less on a job, without realizing, hey, this might be shady, but you can just say, you can upcharge 40% and then have a promo for 40% off. I mean, this is how Closets by Design runs, I think, most of their marketing, because every time I see an ad from them, it's 40% off. I'm going on like 3 years now. I was like, there is no world where you were always 40% off and surviving. So, things to talk through that as well. And once I've told franchisees, hey, you can do a new customer coupon $100 off, maybe you just upcharge 75 and you're really giving them 25 off, but the 100 looks better. And they're like, oh, okay, I can do that. Right. So are we communicating that? And instead of just having the promo codes and saying, oh yeah, go run that or go purchase that, reflecting on the why there. And the last part of these like really boring slides is, the cost per lead is directly influenced by your monetary investment and your time investment, obviously your brand, your season, your industry, etc. So what can operations do to increase ROAS? We need to influence the franchisees to get out and sell. Is the franchisee operationally positioned to invest at least in the brand's recommended marketing minimum? Are they at least spending either the $2,000 requirement or the 5% recommended? That's the first place. If they are not, then one of the questions is, obviously on this point 3, what can we do to get them there? But probably the first question is this franchisee in a position to succeed in general? Because if they're not even able to hit the minimums, this might not be someone who's properly fit to run a franchise, or maybe they're just not in a position to assist the brand and themselves in the growth. So the first question needs to be, is this someone that we can work with, understanding that we are supporting a non-recommended procedure or a minimum here? So 2, if they are we proactively telling them how much they can make per dollar, so that we can then say, do you want to invest X more because X more is going to net you this much in revenue? Like I said before, oftentimes franchisees will go, hell yeah, do it. Great. Again, if that's the no, and let's say this is the no in terms of they are spending the minimum, but they don't have or don't want to invest more, what is the plan to leverage their time instead of cash? Because we simply can't step back as marketing and say, oh, well, that's all that we can do. And ops can't come back to marketing and say, do something about this, because numbers are the numbers. So can we show them that 8 hours door hanging 250 of them actually equals to X amount of call-ins or QR code scans? The conversion rate ends up being this. So instead of telling you to spend another $1,200 to net X in PPC, I can tell you, hey, you or your team need to go out and do 23 hours of door hang 2,500 I don't know, whatever, you know what I'm saying, because it's going to net this amount of money. Sydney, stop laughing at me. You know, I'm bad at doing math on the fly. So again, almost explaining to them how much their hours are worth in terms of revenue. And guess what? We know what our average conversion rate is. We know our average ticket size. So you can put estimates to those hourly customers, hourly jobs. It's very manual, and is a franchisee truly going to track it? No, but if they're in the stage where they're pushing you to grow and not willing to invest digitally, well, you can't go on the street and spin a sign for them. This is the next best thing you can do. Now, ideally, it's a balanced approach over time. This local marketing, especially grassroots, we know it helps lower the cost per lead because it increases volume. Usually they're not clicking on a PPC call or link. They're calling in direct from the GBP, or they're calling the owner directly, or they're walking in, which drops their blended cost per lead, which is your total leads that came in the door, or total customers that came in the door divided, or with the revenue. So that blended CPL, you're going to see lower. And what I often see is franchisees not realizing that you have to earn your right to not spend in marketing. You know, we have a franchise that is 30 years old and they don't spend anything on marketing, and they get 10 to 12 leads call in a day organically, just because they show up a lot. Whereas, I have new franchisees comparing themselves to that. And I'm like, well, they have 30 years of getting out in the community and getting reviews and Google recognizing them as a local business. They've kind of earned their right to not have to do that based on the review and the referral data and, customers. So that said, franchisees also need to be reminded that you have to earn your right to not hustle. It doesn't come automatically because you're a franchise. And then the next thing that I found has helped, especially if I'm, on the board and they're asking, hey, can you just look over our marketing and see if there's anything we can do? The first thing I usually do is have them conduct a survey to gauge where the franchisee is and their appetite to either invest locally or financially. And I'll kind of show you what that looks like here is, if we present a data-driven marketing strategy to grow your business, are you going to invest time but not money? Money but not time? Not at all, or both. Now, thankfully, this brand, it's smaller, and the majority said, we'll do both. Just tell us what to do. The franchisor actually thought it was going to be 70% not at all, and they've given up. What do we do? So this shows us, look, this subset, and we have it by franchisee. I can get on the phone with them, and but the team can get on the phone with them immediately, share some insights and say, you ready to press go? And likely they will. This, subset right here, I'll invest the money, not the time. That's probably the next easiest hit because I can show them, here's your revenue, here's your cost per guest, and this is how much you should spend, go. And then I know that this 18% here is going to may not have or is scared to invest the money. And we're going to have to really push them likely on the ops side to get out and start doing a lot of that local marketing to get their costs at a reasonable place of growth. And then I always like to add this in here, and I usually try to do it twice a year, is, in your opinion, how many hours should a franchisee spend locally advertising their business? And you can see that everyone is all over the place here. We got some people like 16 plus hours. You got half the brand saying 0 hours. So again, expectations need to be aligned better in this brand. And then same thing here. We've got, half the brand saying we should be able to spend between 500 and 1,000. And then, another quarter of the brand says under $500. I've only got a quarter of this brand that's in a reasonable budget frame. So this tells me that they are not even close to understanding what actually has to be invested to grow. So it's going to take a lot of data and education. And the reason why it's important to do this is, one, you can now break in your franchisees into quartile. Who's going to be the hardest to help? Who's not savable? Who's ready to rock? Who's overcapitalized? And it will help you and your team put your time and efforts into things that are truly going to grow the brand. I think no matter what in franchising, we end up spending the majority of our time on the lower quartile, the squeaky wheels. I get it. They're in resource hoarding. They're not making enough. But as a franchisor, we also need to make sure that we're supporting the ones that are working the model, it is working, and having them grow even more. So a live example of this that I had with a franchisee last week, he lit me up. And this is not Rolling Suds, this is a different brand. He lit me up and said, you know, marketing doesn't work, franchising, this brand is terrible, I hate this, you're a waste of human, like any bad thing that you can imagine. And I framed it and put it on my wall because I'm a psycho. And so I worked with ops and said, hey, I'm gonna say, hey, bud, I hear you. Anything you say to me, I haven't said 6 feet in front of a mirror. So let's just look at your data and see what actually this looks like. We pulled their his 3 month totals, cost per lead, digital, meaning stuff that comes in organically and is paid, his digital. We did his lead to estimate conversion rate, his estimate to invoice, his average ticket size, his monthly revenues, and you know what that average marketing spend was. Put it into the screenshots I didn't post, but the marketing revenue calculator, broke it down to monthly what that looked like, and said, hey, if you increase your spend by $1,500, here's what you can expect. He then came back to me and said, so basically if I spend $1,500, I'm going to make $15,000 more in revenue. I'm like, yes, assuming that we don't change a thing. I'm not telling you to go sell more, to sell better, to go be the mayor. Just assume we change nothing. $1 in marketing equals 10 more in revenue. And so I also said, if you want that to net more, we need you to get you out at some trade shows and some this and that and the other thing. I'm trying not to like say the brand. And you know, he came back and said, would love that. I'm not the type of person to do that. I like my time off. And I was like, respect. So in essence, we showed them their real-time data. We modeled it for them so it becomes even harder to dispute. And mind you, they can pull this data as well if they really needed to. We confirmed with them their $1 equals 10. The expectation was set by the franchisee that what was not going to happen. And then they then decided, okay, let's do this. Another caveat that came after this was, well, the seasonality is about to pick up and I don't want you to get credit for what's going to happen naturally. And so what I said back to that is, hey, you've been in business for 5 years. Let's pull the May to June and June to July data from the last couple of years, average out your organic increase anyways, based on seasonality. And then we can subtract that from whatever increase you're going to get. So then we can definitively say that it is not the fault of the weather being nicer, but you did in fact increase your spend and you netted even more amount. So again, everything I'm talking about can be pulled into one simple email per franchisee. So again, navigating this lesson, break it down every single step of the way. Attribution as a whole is very difficult. If you're trying to track exactly where each customer came from each channel, that's something marketing has been trying to do for years. Service Titan is trying to do it. Scorpion's trying to do it. We're all trying to do it and doing it a little bit here and a little bit there, and maybe some are better than the others. But the realistic piece of this is that if you go back to that franchise marketing map that I showed you initially, everyone's probably going to say that they came from PPC or radio or whatever that highest intent is. And then franchisees are going to be more apt to spend less on the other stuff, driving up costs on the higher intent. So while attribution is great, it's not the end all be all in terms of per channel. What the attribution we're looking for is based on your cost per lead, your conversion rate, your ticket size, and your revenue, how much marketing spend can get you how much revenue. And you don't need the breakdown in channels to do that. Where we get more optimized is when you can do that, right? Because now when you've got franchisees saying, I'm going to increase my ad spend by $2,500, where should that go? You can now look at the attribution and say, here's where I recommend we spend that. And that would fall on marketing. And then lastly, if they want to spend more, but they can't, where are they going to be spending their time? Again, if you have the requirement of them to answer all of their phones and all of their reviews and do all of their hiring and firing, maybe they're even doing, you know, some of the work while they're ramping, where is that time coming from? What can we take off their plate so that they have more time to drive business to their store? And then if they don't want to do grassroots, okay, but then you need to spend X, because we can't have you coming back here and saying it's marketing's fault, it's the franchisor's fault, because I don't want to do the time piece. I'm not going to spend more. It must be that the SEO is terrible. I like to tell franchisees, you should bank on having 0 leads come in from SEO or your GBP. Do I want that to happen? No. But if I set the expectation that I expect no leads to come in for free, then it's just icing on the cake when they do come in. And it's on us to build those SEO links and backlinks and grow the links and the website up high. But there's so much out of our control in terms of the algorithm and length of time that if franchisees are sitting back waiting for their local site to just pop up #1, it's not a good use of their time, and it's a bad expectation setting. So again, then I want you to take all of this and say, you're sitting down in what I recommend is a bi-weekly marketing ops meeting and saying, what is the best balance for where we're at right now in this season or in this month? What do we want to see? What are our brand benchmarks? And then again, going one-to-one with these franchisees and assuming that they are not looking at their numbers, assuming that they are not going to instinctively increase or decrease their spend, because they're not. And while we want to get them to a place where they do, I think that this is a piece of franchising that won't change. It is always going to be expected of us to give those recommendations as well. And I'm okay with that, as long as we're doing it effectively through data, and we can ideally automate it so we're not pulling everybody's attention from all of our departments on one-to-one franchisee support. That said, if we can build the reports, that's even better. So I'm ending 8 minutes early. I talked a lot. It was a boring presentation today, but again, I think it's really important to see how all of this data plays back. This will be hosted on your franchise group. Yes, it's going to be a paid group. Yes, we're giving you whatever, 3 months free or whatever, so you can go in, download it, and cancel. I don't care. My goal is not to gate this and make you pay. My goal is to build with Adam a platform where all of these resources live eternally, so that we all can learn from each other and not have to rely on live webinars all the time. If you have any questions, let me know. Feel free to shoot me an email or a LinkedIn message. Happy to walk through anything. And then the final piece of this session will be, I believe, on June 2nd, which is a Monday. So be on the lookout for that calendar invite as well. All right. Thanks a lot, guys, for joining. Have a great rest of your week.